most outstanding thing I can remember is when someone would have a birthday, all the other girls would make corsages for them. And I can always remember my birthday coming up, you know, and sort of wondering if I existed. I knew it was my birthday, but no one else did. I became very freaky. I was withdrawn and floating, just floating. I was told over and over again that I was bad, that I was no good, that I was rotten, until I reached a point where I thought that I was, you know, my insides were like an apple core that was sucked through with worms, rotten, and something to be discarded in a garbage can.
Bedlam, a description of the chaos that rages within troubled minds. Bedlam, a place of uproar and confusion. In the violent, supersonic, technotronic, future-shocked bedlam, what is sane? What is mad? Who has the remedies to save our future? The most serious health problem facing North America concerns disorders of the mind. Mental patients fill more than half of all hospital beds. 1 person in every 10 has problems that need psychiatric help. 1 out of every 8 can expect to spend some time in a psychiatric institution. One urban study estimates that 1 person in 4 has emotional disturbances which cripple his attempts to carry on a normal life. Psychiatry has long assumed that mental illness stems from personal life problems. Whether that is the whole truth, we do not yet know. Biochemists point to brain chemistry, social psychiatrists to the nature of modern society. Treatment of mental illness will explore the brain's chemistry. Treatment of mental illness will reach out into streets and homes. As mental illness research moves into the future, our concepts of sanity and insanity will change. Psychiatrist Richard Oswald uses film to help patients understand where their teenagers' heads are at and why. In his view, times of rapid social change break down clear definitions of sanity.
You gotta be left or right, you gotta be left or right, you gotta be left or right, you gotta be left or right. We're into a time now where the way to think about human behavior and the problems of living is changing. There's a whole generation and a whole group of people who've had experiences that lead us to understand that the rules vary from place to place, that we can't prescribe rules for people and then judge whether they're crazy or not crazy, or psychotic or not psychotic, or neurotic or not neurotic. Are they really crazy, or is it the system that they can't tolerate, or do they bring something into the system that makes that system not usable to them? So we're not looking inside the skin as much, although you can't throw that out.
Lunatic. Weird. Dementia praecox. Schizophrenic. Martyr. Psychotic. Possessed. A vocabulary of madness has always existed to isolate and to describe certain misfits of a culture. Throughout history, there have been psychic healers to bring deviants back to their senses or to punish them. As the Dark Ages wane, madmen are placed in colonies once occupied by lepers. With the rise of cities comes the lunatic asylum, Bedlam. Philippe Pinel, under the liberating influence of the French Revolution, removes the chains of the asylum inmates. In the New World, Dr. Benjamin Rush practices bloodletting. He believes that blood disorder causes mind disorder. The moral treatment movement takes hold in early 19th century America. Peaceful surroundings, rest from care, is seen as therapy enough for troubled minds. As a consequence, discharges from mental institutions rise to a level that to this day has not been equaled. At the turn of the century, Sigmund Freud develops a theory of the unconscious that will forever change the face of psychiatric thinking. Bedlam, 1948. Cost per patient, 47 cents a day. 1964. Cost per patient, $6 a day. Breakthrough. Mental health studies conclude that a high portion of pathological behavior is due to hospital confinement rather than to the patient's mental illness. Widespread use of drugs helps move people out of institutions. For as long as the dosage works and the patient continues its use. A state hospital superintendent predicts that in 15 years there will be no mental hospitals. Halfway houses are a step in that direction. Here, people under psychiatric care work, pay board, or take as much responsibility as they are able while living in a supportive community that bridges the way to harsher realities. 24-year-old Lynn, mother of two, veteran of state hospital back wards, began overdosing tranquilizers and slashing her wrists when it suddenly happened that no one in her life was able to comprehend the meaning of her behavior.
I would find myself crying, and I couldn't explain why, and feeling very, very depressed, and going to my mother and asking her to hold me, or going to my husband and asking me, him to hold me, only finding that him feeling that I wanted something sexual from him. And it wasn't at that point at all. I was just a child in my head. I didn't want a sexual relationship, and that made him very mad, very, very angry.
There is a new view of psychosis that may be as important a breakthrough for our time as Freud's work was for his. British psychoanalyst R.D. Laing claims that our social structure encourages a schizoid personality and calls it sane. When the schizoid split between the true inner self and the false outer self breaks down in a certain fashion, we say a person is psychotic, mentally ill. A leading proponent of Lang's theory in North America is psychiatrist Dr. James Gordon.
Becoming psychotic may involve somebody feeling so many mixed emotions about everything. I know one person said that everything he said is a lie, so he stopped talking because he didn't want to lie. And so he's called catatonic, but that's really just a description of his behavior. It's not a description of his feeling state, which is incredibly alive. He's just feeling so much that he's not able to come out of it and tell it to anyone, or communicate it, or act on it.
At one point there was a conflict between myself and my children where I had beaten my oldest boy. And I wrote, it's gone now, I wrote the word mother with a razor on my arm. And I was feeling, I'm nothing. A mother doesn't do this to a child. I'm hurting my baby, and I don't want to hurt my baby. My baby is the one thing that I want to be straight out of my whole rotten life. If I'm really screwed up and mixed up, I want to give my children something. And I knew that I was hating him and feeling ambivalent about his existence. And I was inflicting on him my own disturbance, and I was aware of it. And I wanted to punish myself. I wanted to bleed. I didn't want to hurt my children.
If one regards the psychotic experience as an illness from which one is to be cured, then the reasonable thing from that premise is to then push back down all the stuff that's come out. The other route is to allow all the feelings that have been pushed down to come out, and to begin to work with the person on those feelings. And what that often involves is really the person, and to some degree the therapist, as he's working with someone else, begins to live through that psychotic person's life with him again. And one can begin to live it through in a way which makes more human sense than the first way.
Mind disorder, emotional upset. What happens to the chemistry of the brain when mental illness appears? Researchers will lead the way to discovering more about this uncharted region. Drugs which alter brain chemistry promise startling results. One theory holds that chemical imbalance in the brain can cause mental and emotional problems. Biochemical psychiatry believes that the next decade will uncover chemical cures for madness. Today, there are approximately 40 compounds to treat emotional disturbance. By the end of the decade, there will be hundreds. LSD and other hallucinogens may become a tool for treatment and research. One experimental form of therapy uses a combination of mescaline and LSD to guide patients through a musically programmed voyage of self-discovery. The trippers begin to discover that the rapidly shifting moods of love and hate, of panic and distress that accompany their visions are self-created. When the trip is over, therapist and patient work through the feelings generated by the drug, much as more conventional therapy works through patients' dreams. Group therapy of all kinds is fast replacing individual therapy. More people can afford it. It can accommodate more people. At their present rate of growth, human potential centers may soon be as common a feature of the North American landscape as drive-in movies. The group session, a kind of trial by intimacy, encourages the removal of social masks. With a mix of psychological insight, Zen techniques, meditation, massage, touch, confrontation, the quest is for discovery and expression of a more authentic self, a new definition of sanity.
It's almost hard to talk about mental illness and mental health anymore. As a matter of fact, I doubt in the future that we will. I think we'll talk about the phenomenology of living, and we'll talk about human distress, and we'll talk about people who are caught in situations, and we'll talk about people who are in need of response from people with a variety of skills. Somebody lets out a cry for help, let's go help them. But we can't do it if we say, they call up and they say, my house is on fire, in a sense, and we say, well, bring the fire in next Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. If the house is on fire, the house is on fire, and obviously we've got to have a system that goes to answer the fire.
The crisis unit is a new concept in community mental health. To this group, the eviction of welfare tenants from a condemned hotel is a mental health issue as well as a political one. A variety of human dilemmas confront the crisis unit daily.
Mrs. Cohen, yes.
Was she sick?
The nerves. Never sick, no.
Oh, really?
She's 3 years here, 2.5 years.
We first came in contact with Sarah when she moved to this hotel. Prior to that time, she'd lived in a condemned building where she was terribly afraid. And as a result, barricaded herself in her room, was repeatedly robbed, mugged. Fortunately, some relatives found her there and helped her to move to this hotel.
Yeah. You can come over last time she went.
Okay. What's it like over there?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what ride they feed you.
And when she moved, being uprooted from the place that she had been in for so long, she was just acting very, very crazy. She was yelling a lot. She was dressing very wild. She was screaming and cursing at people in this hotel. And the management of the hotel said, we can't keep Sarah unless something happens. And the only alternative seemed to be that she would go into a mental hospital. What eventually happened was we helped her regain some of her possessions and generally tried to get her oriented to this neighborhood. She's made new friends. She's not acting crazy at all anymore. Can you remember what it was like, before you came here?
It was no good.
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but I got used to it.
Fred?
Yes?
Let me some water. I have to wash her.
These families are examining daily rituals under the guidance of a family therapist. Families are breaking up, and members of them breaking down in ever-increasing numbers. These people hope to prevent that happening in their community.
Nobody knows what they do. Freud said people know what they do, but you have to lay them down for a long time before they can tell you.
Yeah.
And we're saying it's past that. Nobody knows what they do.
Family therapist Andrew Ferber collects data about families by placing TV cameras in people's homes.
What goes on in a doctor's office is a very small and stereotyped piece of the repertoire of an individual or of a family. So we're beginning to think of things like sending people out with video cameras to videotape their own lives, to bring it in and use a therapist as a consultant about the life.
Dr. Ferber's fellow spy is Professor of Psychiatry Albert Shefflin.
It's terribly hard to maintain the goals of a culture if it's admitted that everybody does that which you're not supposed to do. For instance, if you've got a culture that has a goal that masturbation is sinful, one of the things you can't possibly ever let it out is that everybody masturbates. Because each person has to have the fantasy that only he masturbates and doesn't meet the standards. Otherwise, you have no chance of getting the goal, no chance of the goal becoming imposed on the people. And so, if I would think that the danger of showing video pictures of family life in America, not idealized ones on commercial TV, but actual ones, is that maybe almost every Joe who's now feeling guilty that he's not doing well, everybody else is doing better than he is, will suddenly say, well, geez, they're all doing as badly as I am.
When I look at families today, we usually see people who have some sense that they don't know what's going on. And they're full of all kinds of half-hearted notions about what's to blame.
There's a new culture borning, and it consists of people who have an understanding of the breadth of human problems. Involved, I believe, is species survival. I believe we will come up with ways of dealing with human need which we haven't even dreamed of yet. We will wind up with a whole redefinition of what we're now calling mental illness. We won't be concerned with deviance and the labeling of deviance. We'll be concerned with how to respond to people, to pull them into social systems that are in themselves responsive, viable units of living, which are much more in tune with the universal balance of things. How soon that culture will be able to evolve such social forms, I think, is absolutely crucial. If we do not evolve them in a way which is also congruent with planning and thinking that will ensure our survival, the whole thing becomes irrelevant. We can stop worrying about mental illness because we can stop worrying about our species. However, if we can do that, if we can give our new culture a chance, if the daddies of the world can help the children with the knowledge that they have, and can learn from the view of the new civilization that is beginning now to grow, we have a very good chance, I believe, of wiping out much of what we now call mental illness.